Welcome to the Influencer Show with your host, Trishawn Ben Salmi.
Hello everyone and welcome back to the Influencer Show, where I interview people who can help influence the way you live life in a number of different ways. I'm your host T7, and today we have a very special guest with us. So today we have Tracy, and if you'd like to simply introduce yourself to our listeners about you and simply why you do what you do.
So my name is Tracy Repchuk. I don't know how detailed you want to go. I actually been in business since I was 19 years old. So I have a very high affinity on the power of the youth and where they can be going. So I started my first company. I was a software developer in 1985 at a time where, one, there were no women, but more importantly, to be that young in that era was extremely rare. So there isn't much I haven't faced barrier-wise or success and then failure-wise. So it's I really serve as an all-encompassing mentor and coach for people all over the world. I've spoken in 39 countries. I'm a 9-time #1 international best-selling author. Appeared on every major television network, ABC, NBC, Fox, CBS. The list goes on. Forbes 23 times. Been in 3 motivational movies, and I've won awards from the Senate, the Assembly, the White House, and President Obama. And there's a few other things I'm sure in there, but that's a great start.
That is absolutely amazing. And why do you do what you do?
Well, it's it's been an evolution. When, as a 35-year entrepreneur, the original reason I started a company was I wanted to be a millionaire, right? So I wanted to be a millionaire. By the time I was 30, that was the goal. And I did accomplish that goal very early on, in fact. And then the goals started to change, right? So then I was pregnant and married, and so the goal in my company completely changed. So of why I did what I did. At that point, it then became family centric. So I moved my husband and myself home, and we have 3 kids. And we since 1994, well before there was virtual home-based businesses, we moved our entire company home and sent 15 staff virtual. And then, then I became a pioneer on the internet. And so I really became part of that movement to do good and to get good works well known. And so, of course, I was building websites and doing email funnel marketing and social media and anything that could help people get their messages online. And then really now it's a little bit more of ensuring that people get what they need, and particularly entrepreneurs and businesses get what they need. And in this case, it's connections and leads and people that can help you take your business to the next level.
That is absolutely amazing, especially just being able to, as you said, just pioneering that field. It's something that it's just something that is not often seen as much, especially despite how young you were at the time. That's absolutely crazy, and something that really must have shocked people on multiple levels, really.
Yes. Well, you've been through that, I'm sure, right? When I started and I was 19, I looked like a 12-year-old. I was a girl in the software arena, and I was, in the beginning, I would have to go and do presentations to try and win bids for contracts. And it would be like me and IBM and Ward Millett and, some other monster company. And I'd be presenting in front of a board of about 50-year-old men. And I would have to attempt to beat out giants at every step of the way, because I was just a little tiny software developer, And so it taught me rapidly to A, never underestimate myself, B, don't put myself in a category, and C, find that differentiating factor. What is unique about me? How can I brand and move that forward? How can I position myself in a way that I look better against them? And that's how I, of course, evolved as a marketer and a business strategist was from purely a survival standpoint.
That is absolutely amazing. And what would you say are sort of like the biggest, that thing that had the biggest influence on you that you wish you had known sooner?
You know, I wish I had known sooner about database and list building. For the past 15 years, I've been building landing pages and doing email marketing for companies. And still, probably only 12% of companies are properly building a database to where they can automate the email communication to prospects, to clients, to nurture campaigns, to as deep as you want to go, to the people that have joined your community. I wish I'd have known that earlier, because back in the days when my company was called Bravo Software Group, and now it's called InnerSurf International. But back in those days, we weren't database building. We weren't email and name capturing. And if I did, my lists would be in the millions right now. So I wish I'd have definitely better done content and contact management strategies earlier on.
That's definitely important. I think it's just so important just to have sort of like a very dispersed understanding of so many different things, because then you're able to link them and just utilize those teachings and combine the two to create some amazing things, really. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, and like, what would you say people could do to stay motivated during moments of crisis?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, you know, it's interesting. Everybody has their own crises occur, right, throughout their careers or throughout their lives. And you know, back in 2003, I was actually in Toronto at the heart of SARS at that time. So we experienced this type of scenario. And so it actually gave me premonition on what to do when something like this occurs. And of course, when this hit most of us in early 2020, whether it be, you know, Feb, March, or April for many, and it became global and it became catastrophic for companies. I mean, I'm in California right now. We're still not open, right? We still can't go to restaurants. We still can't go to barbers and salons and any of that. And how many months has that been? And so I think the thing you have to do is first understand that the world won't be the same moving forward. Your business can't be the same moving forward in many cases. I have spent a lot of these months doing two things. I pivoted my own business to an entirely different line of work almost. But the other thing I was doing for clients, especially like yoga and Pilates and health studios and anybody who had brick and mortar, they needed to move all of their stuff online rapidly. They needed to build membership sites. They need to operate online. And for those that reacted rapidly early in March and April, they're now established and back to making money. For those that were hoping to wait it out you know, wait for that magical moment where they just got to go back to their normal way of operating, they unfortunately are going to take quite a while to bounce and recover. And that, of course, goes for retailers. It goes for almost every industry out there. We are now an online world. And so you need to figure out what it is that you know, and how do you present that to the world using online media?
Yeah, I definitely agree, especially when it came to just simply having that mindset to understand, like, we're not going to go back to how things were. So then you have to adapt, or you're simply going to be left behind. You're going to constantly be playing catch up, really. So it's just about being able to have things in place. And it's not saying that, like, you always have to think of the worst and things like that. It's simply just having a plan B and other plans in place just in case, as opposed to thinking about like the worst that can happen constantly. Just think of it as another way that you're then able to sustain yourself, you're then able to maintain that level of impact and just basically keep at the same level, if not improve to a higher level as well. And
Yeah. It takes a whole different mindset at this point, and a whole different way of thinking than any traditional methods you may have been, running or operating your business on.
exactly, definitely agree, definitely. And sort of like, what advice would you give to those who may be looking to start a brand new business right now?
So, I mean, one is, I think the best advice I was ever given, and what caused me to become an entrepreneur in the first place, was when I was graduating as a computer programmer, and my college professor, he said to me, "So what are you going to do?" And I said, "I'm going to go to Toronto and I'll go become a programmer." And he said, "No way, you're too dynamic and you're too outgoing and you're a leader. People follow you." He said, "You're an entrepreneur." And so when I asked what is an entrepreneur, he said to me, it's you need to find a need and fill a gap. All right. So in my career, which is, of course, along the lines of technology, which means that it's like a raging river, at all times, change. Nothing remains constant for very long. And I've seen every everything that has occurred actually from the beginning of the internet, because I was on there before it was even called the internet. And so I think it's very, very important that you take a look at what are your skill sets, and then what is a gap out there that you can fill. Now, quite frankly, there's never been more opportunity, simply because so many people in the population are struggling. Like
Exactly.
here, 9 major retailers alone went bankrupt. That means approximately, from that alone, there's almost 575,000 people unemployed from those retail outlets. So what are things that they can look at to do? And that is actually why I got involved in Be Connected, was to fill the gap for anybody that was looking for, whether it be an opportunity or a way to connect with people that could help take their business, their life, their speaking, their podcasting, whatever it was, to the next level. And again, I was brought on originally as a coach, and I fell so in love with this concept, which emerged at the beginning of the COVID-19, that when they offered me a position as executive vice president in charge of global marketing, I took it. And so we literally just launched September 1st, and look where we are now, in 25 countries simultaneously. And so it's immediately blown up, simply because it is so important that people have a place globally to connect, given the landscape that we're on now. So somebody in South Africa can say, I need to connect with somebody in Canada, and I need them to be able to handle this for me, or I'm looking for this in Singapore, or I'm looking for this in Brazil, whatever it is. And that is what this has. This is what this is providing.
That is absolutely amazing, really, definitely. And I think it's definitely like just so powerful, because then being able to like just see an opportunity, just simply being able to look at it from different ways to how you can help out, and just simply understanding both of the story, really, and just simply being able to be of service at times to simply making people's lives better, because like just being able to see how much of a loss people have gone through at this time, you're then able to provide them with that opportunity that can actually really change their lives for the better in so many ways.
Yes, and in this situation was an example, is that opportunity was presented to me in March. And I did exactly what I had done when SARS hit, and that was I'd already taken now my company down to ground zero and said, okay, what does this new version of this company look like? And that's when that came, and I was like, and so originally, like I say, I was just servicing them, but because they allow for people who are unemployed to cost effectively jump onto a platform and get what they need. And then not only that, if they want to make money from it, they can. as a partner in this. And that's, again, what I love about it, because it's a simple solution that honestly doesn't take a huge skill set, but you can build a whole business acumen around it.
Exactly. Definitely agree. Definitely. It's just something that has a huge impact. Yeah. It doesn't take a lot to learn, really.
No, nothing.
And sort of like, what was that pivotal point along your journey? And sort of like, what would you say that you learned from it?
What was my pivot point?
Yeah.
Okay, so again, many pivot points simply because of how long I've been in business, right? I would say I have probably three major pivot points, and the first one occurred when the internet came, right? So it was still a year almost away from being the internet, but I had seen at that moment what was coming, and I switched everything within my company to be prepared for that moment. And that got me government contracts. It got me, banks. It got me huge corporations and things of that nature in the early days of the internet, simply because nobody else knew what this thing was and how they were going to leverage it. Walmart, JCPenney, everybody, we were working with at that level. So that was a pivot point. The next pivot point for me came with kids, when we moved everything home and said, what would a company look like that puts family first and is able to work from that? And so that was the pivot point. The next pivot point came when my parents were aging, and I was like, I'm going to need possibly a way to earn income when I'm not there, right? So I started to implement strategies within the company that, I could wake up and there's money in the bank regardless of whether I showed or not. So I started to implement membership sites. Be Connected is another one of those strategies for passive or recurring income streams. And sure enough, when I got that in place, my brother calls me. They live in Nova Scotia, Canada. I live in California. I don't know what that is, like, 4,000, 5,000 miles apart. And they said my mom was dying. And so me and my husband hopped on a plane. We go to Nova Scotia, and only to, when I arrived to the hospital, she was in a coma. I took her hand and she woke up. Now, that moment led to me needing to be there to take care of my parents for 7 months. Had I needed to get back to a job, had I needed to get back and constantly work my company or it would go bankrupt, had I not put that pivot point in place, I wouldn't have been able to have what was the most precious time with my parents ever. And my mom ended up leaving the hospital. She was in a wheelchair, but granted, had I not been there, there's no way she would have survived what she went through or what she did. And my dad has dementia, so there's no way he could have coped either. He would have ended up possibly in a home situation, a nursing home. And so I think that's one of, next to my kids, I think that's one of my greatest moments, and that was resulted from a pivot point. And then, of course, me doing what I'm doing right now for Be Connected is the other pivot point that I took, which is I needed to be able to service far more people than I could in the scenario that I was in, with a tool that allows them to push a button and connect with other business entrepreneurs on a one-to-one basis. And so this just happened to be there, and that became the pivot point that I'm on right now.
That is quite a wide scale of things that you clearly had to overcome in this. It's simply just amazing how you're then able to, as you said, implement different things into different areas of your life, and just simply show how people are then able to simply balance out in many different areas of their life, really, because people often think that, like, you either have to work or you look after kids and stuff like that, but it's about being able to find the balance where you're able to simply work with whatever's best for you, really. I think that's definitely something that's so amazing, and something that people need to just awaken to the fact that you're able to simply do both as well, really.
Exactly. A lot of times people say you can't have it all. Well,
Yeah.
if you build your life by design, you can. You just have to be conscious and aware of what, I always tell my clients in particular, what's your end game? And now we have to build the strategy back to that end game, right? So I always say we're going to begin with the end in mind. And then all the structure and strategy we put into place. And this is how I built my life and the various permeations of my company was on that exact thing. If I knew that I wanted to be home with my husband and my kids, what had to happen in order to make that a reality moment? And so that's you just plan backwards, and that's how you get there.
I definitely agree with that, especially like just doing it backwards. It definitely makes the whole journey a lot simpler, as opposed to constantly thinking like, what's next? You're going to get to that point eventually where you're like, oh my gosh, this is a huge obstacle. But then working it back, it just makes everything sound so simple and so easy. Definitely something that people don't understand and just don't utilize enough in everyday life.
That's right. Yeah.
And like, if you had to be another person for one day, who would it be and why?
Wow. Another person for one day. Holy mackerel. I don't know if I've ever even thought of that. Wow. I'm not positive who it would maybe be. It would probably be, though, an actor or something like fun, I would choose like a red carpet Oscar-winning day if I could be the person for a day, it'd be that.
That's great, definitely. And sort of like, if you, like, let's say you had a megaphone and you could say one thing to the world that would have a lasting influence, what would it be?
One thing to the world?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's see. It would definitely be, it would probably revolve around this messaging, which is we are spiritual beings, treat each other as that, and peace is possible. And if we want the world to be a better place, it starts with us.
Definitely. I definitely agree. Because like, you need to actually be willing to put in the work before you're then asking others to then come along and do the same, really. Like leading by example.
Yes, exactly. That's a good one. Lead by example and don't expect others to do what you're not willing to do.
Yeah.
Things along those lines, yeah.
Definitely. I definitely agree. And what are your views on the word legacy? And what legacy are you looking to leave?
Yeah, legacy, I think it's funny. Legacy, I think, many people think it's just a luxury, right? Like, or it's like leaving money to the kids, right? To me, legacy is definitely the imprint that I want to make on society or the planet as a whole. And some of the legacy pieces, I think my legacy began with the fact that I was a woman penetrating 4 different fields that were male dominated. And letting other women know that, in particular, that you can do anything. But it's up to you to break the barriers, right? If there's a barrier in front of you, it's up to you to break it. And if somebody else has broken the barrier for you already, then it's up to you to bring others with you. So you have to lift as you climb. That's where I began. And then, of course, the next legacy point became bestowing in my children the spiritual values and ensuring that they became, carriers of goodness in the planet, and that they were serving in that way as such, and they are. My kids now are 23, 24, and 25. And then the legacy that I'm really kind of working on now, I do a lot in the field of human rights. That's one of, I'll say, charities of choice, if you want to call that. And I do, because I find that particularly human rights encompasses everything that's happening to mankind that is not the way we should be behaving, right? And of course, there's 1,000 incidents, everything from, dosing children with Ritalin, all the way up to, what we see happening in the streets with rioting and things today, and in the way people are behaving with others, or there's any sort of discrimination, whether it be racial, religious, any of these. There's just no need for any of it. Let someone have their opinion, and always treat others with kindness as you deserve to be treated too. And I think that's where my mindset goes. And then the legacy I'm using or the platform I'm currently using is this particular platform, in that I can empower so many people with the ability to connect, that the more we especially globally connect and be aware of what's happening, not just in our own backyards, but what's happening in South Africa, what's happening, in China, what's happening in Russia, what's happening in the UK, what's happening in Canada, what's happening, when a hurricane goes through Louisiana and the West Indies, what's happening down there, and what help do people need? And if we leave everybody in isolation to fend on their own, that's when we have a collapse or a disparity with who gets to survive well on the planet and who doesn't. And so it's really more about creating a world in which it's a better place for all.
I definitely agree, especially like how you said, just about just making sure we're actually taking into account how different everyone's lives are, really, because not many of us actually are able to comprehend. Just being able to actually comprehend how what might be a struggle for you may be a luxury for others, and just how different everyone's mindset is, really, just as a whole.
Yeah, that's right. And the more you're gifted, right, the more is expected of you. So that, always keeping that in mind as well when there are situations like we're in right now, 33 million unemployed. So what's a way that we can all help in that situation?
Exactly. Definitely. And is there any advice that you'd give to your younger self?
Yeah, somebody asked me this once, and the first thing out of my mouth was buy Google. I think I would have definitely given myself some super good stock tips, especially in the tech arena. Apple, buy Apple. They're like $2 trillion now as a valuation. But it's interesting. Honestly, I think other than that, I'm not sure I would go back and change. I've been through so many experiences, I've been through tragedies. I've been through, things that you wonder why you, and then other elations where you're like, wow, I made it. And I think it's all those experiences, quite honestly, that have made me and given me the strength and wisdom that I have today to be the leader that I am, and to be able to carry the weight and responsibility that I do for the people that are surrounded by me or that connect with me. And so I'm actually grateful for almost every single thing that occurred throughout my life. And so, I wouldn't want to go back and say, hey, God, don't go with that guy, because that's going to lead to, oh, my Lord, right? Because if I did, I wouldn't have the strength to perhaps, relate to people that were maybe abused in a marriage, or physically abused, or emotionally abused, or whatever, right? So there's all these things that just make you. And so even though you don't have answers to something that might be occurring to you right now, and as we know, for many, everything from homelessness to what am I going to put food on the table? How am I going to make rent and mortgage? That question is in more people's minds right now than ever before in history, including the Depression. And so I think it's just important for you to know that you will get through this. You have that strength. You were given that strength. And that as you move through this time and end up on the other side, you will find a way to apply the experience and knowledge that you have for the good of yourself and others. And that's really, I think, we're in one big learning learning cycle here on this planet, and so just learn from it. That's the best way to do it.
Exactly. Yeah, definitely agree, especially how like everything that's happened to us in our lives happened for a reason to simply get us to where we are today, really. Because like if you were to pick out and choose like what you want to stay, then it wouldn't end you up in the exact same place, really. So that's just about
That's right.
understanding how everything happens for a reason and just simply preparing you for tomorrow.
That's right. For really your destiny, what you were put on this planet to do, there's possibly experiences in there that you had to go through so that you could accomplish your mission and your purpose.
Definitely agree. Definitely. And where can the listeners find you if they'd like to find out about any upcoming things that you may have?
You could go to the site there, bkforbiz.com. That's the project that I'm working on, that I truly believe is going to be one of the game changers of the business world. And other than that, and my name, Tracy Repchuk, on any social media platform, you can connect to me there. And of course, tracyrepchuk.com allows you to go to what I'll call my personal branded site. And fastactionresults.com connects you to my email newsletter, which means that if you want to keep hearing from me on a regular basis, that's a great way to go.
Thank you. Definitely do urge that you listeners go and check that out. I'd like to thank you for coming on the Influencer Show today.
Thank you, Trey. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. And I'd also like to thank you listeners for sticking to the end. You guys have any questions, feel free to either reach out to myself or Tracy. And I hope you guys have a great day, and I'll see you in the next one. That's it from me. Bye.